There's not a bride or a groom in the world who doesn't say I do without the hope and expectation it'll last forever. But sadly, new statistics have revealed the divorce rate in Australia is on the rise, an average marriage now lasting 12 years. For today's agenda, we are asking, is it unrealistic to get married for life? And I'm joined by psychotherapist and relationship expert Melissa Ferrari and lawyer Sam Macedoni. Good morning and welcome to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Melissa, many of us are familiar with the 7-year itch. What is it about 12 years that seems to be a tipping point for couples wanting to go their separate ways?
Well, by that point, usually the kids have gotten a little bit older. And so we're getting to that point where we can even start to, while they're not adults, they have become a little bit more independent. And so then a couple goes, OK, we're not focusing so much on the children. Now we've got to focus more on each other. And so that can become a very difficult time because some couples don't know how to reignite the spark and keep things going. And if couples can learn to do it, well, then we might head in a different direction around divorce.
Well, we might get to that a bit later because that's essentially just growing apart, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you've got some advice on that. Sam, marriage, of course, is a conventional arrangement, isn't it? It's something we're almost expected to do right from the beginning. Is it realistic, though, to be wedded to someone for life?
Look, I think in the past it was a realistic expectation that when you got married, you were married for life. But nowadays, I'm afraid, things are a lot different, and I don't really think it is realistic for the young people of today to expect that the marriage will last forever. Personally, I think if you can get through, firstly, the 7-year period and then the 12-year period, you're on your way to a lasting relationship. However, I think most people nowadays that get married should plan for the fact that it might fail and have something in place in readiness so it's not such a shock if and when it happens.
What are you suggesting then, a prenup?
Without doubt, a prenuptial agreement is the first thing that you should put in place because that draws your mind to the fact that, look, if this thing doesn't work and it does break down, we have to agree that I brought this into the marriage, you brought that into the marriage, and if we break up, we keep that, but we'll divide equally, hopefully, what we put together.
It's very unromantic, though,
Well, it is very unromantic, but it will save a lot of pain and a lot of trauma and a lot of money if you've got things in place beforehand. You should always plan for the unexpected and then hope like mad it won't happen.
Melissa, do you think some of this has got to do with our attitude towards divorce and that we're no longer shamed by it? We're no longer seen as a failure if a marriage ends in the way that perhaps in the past we were?
Well, I think society is shifting around this and we're starting to realise more around the difficulty of relationships. Relationships are hard. Keeping a marriage together does take a lot of energy. And so for people nowadays, it's like you get to a point where it's sort of like we've come into this to stay together forever, but a lot of things happen and lots to do with the brain. We automate each other after a while. We start to think, I know you, and you aren't as exciting to me anymore. So it's got to be deliberate in how you do create that excitement again.
From a legal perspective, Sam, what options do couples have if they've got to that point and they've decided that they need to file for divorce?
First thing they need to do is to talk about what they want in splitting up. They need to talk about who's going to get what, who's going to look after the children, who's going to be responsible for their welfare, and try and get it together and then go and see a lawyer and get it formalised into a consent order that can be filed with the court because then it becomes binding. But if you just nag at each other and you refuse to agree on anything, there will be mental issues, there will be financial issues, and there'll be all other things that will just break and split them apart even further and virtually make it impossible to come to any decision in the end that's worthwhile. And unfortunately, the lawyers make a lot of money out of that, but this is something that you should avoid.
Yeah, with all due respect, a lot of people don't want to get lawyers involved, and there is the path of mediation. Just explain that to our viewers.
Well, mediation is where you can get together with a mediator and try and resolve your issues. In other words, this is what I want, this is what you want, this is what bothers me, that's what bothers you, and come to an agreement, which then you need to go to a lawyer to get to the court to get it formalised by way of a consent order so it becomes binding.
Melissa, there's some suggestion that social media can be to blame partly for the increasing divorce rate. Do you want to elaborate on that?
I think social media gives more opportunity to create connections. It can be, oh, gee, that's that old flame from 10 years ago who I used to know. I'll send a friend's request, it gets accepted. And the start out is we're just going to be friends. But then people start to realise that there's something else going on, and so they start to form an attraction, because, you know, the brain can start to form attraction just through that kind of feeling that you get, even if you haven't seen someone for a long time.
Wow.
So if that's reignited, the next thing you know, you can be in an infidelity.
Because were it not for social media, you wouldn't necessarily come into contact with them. That's really interesting.
Exactly.
Speaking of social media, we asked you on Facebook if you thought it was unrealistic to marry for life. Wendy says, married 40 years in May and we are so happy together. Marriage has to be worked at and there is give and take. James says it's unrealistic to get married. I have a ban on live-in partners, even de facto, so I don't have to split assets or pay compensation in the event of a breakup. Gee, he's romantic. Paula says, secret to my marriage, have your own life and then one together, be your own person and a partner. Sam, I guess that's also sort of suggesting have your own finances potentially as well?
Look, I think it's a great idea nowadays to have separate bank accounts together with a joint bank account. You should have independence on one side and you should have a joint living arrangement and financial arrangement as well. That way you'll always have some sort of independence, and as one of those emails said, be yourself but also be a partner. In other words, live together but have your own life as well, so that you can look after yourself should something happen. It just gives you that independence, and I think it helps you negotiate and agree with your partner a lot better as well.
And you should know you've been married how many years?
48.
48 years. You could have had 3 wives, you realise that, don't you?
I could have, but thankfully I've only got...
Not at the same time, I might add.
No. I've got the one and I'm very happy with her.
Melissa, just on a final note, Sam, I think, makes a very, very valid point. If you can maintain your sense of identity, your sense of self, it is so important. For couples who might be watching this and feel like they are growing apart, what is your thought as a relationship expert?
Just keep in mind and be kind to yourself. Relationships are hard. There are many things going on with science and the brain, and things change over time. And if we're not aware of what's going on, it can become very, very difficult, because it's like, gee, how did we get here? So I think be very, very kind to yourself. Seek help from a really good couple therapist who's specifically trained and understanding how the brain works as well, because so much of it to do with love is to do with the brain. And I think if you have come to a decision where you do decide, you know, this is not for me, we have to remember that a bad marriage can affect mental health. And it can affect mental health in ways that for some people it can really exasperate in a way that they feel like they can't recover. And so that kindness to yourself to say, I have to leave because this is not good for me, it's not good for my children. So I think really, you know, society is so quick to judge when somebody does end up in a separation and divorce and they didn't work hard enough at it. I sit with people every day who work so very, very hard, and sometimes it doesn't work and it's the best decision. And then I say, if you've developed the courage to do it, well, then celebrate it and go where the love is. You know, if you really are heartbroken, go to people who love and support you so that you can at least experience that feeling of, you know, we're backing you, we know it was hard for you, and everyone's going to have an opinion on it.
Oh, that is fantastic advice. I really, really appreciate your insight, and obviously, Sam, good to get your thoughts as well.
Thank you.